They cornered me in my own kitchen, blocking the doorway like prison guards. That's when Tiffany put on her sweetest smile and said, "Old lottery winners have accidents all the time. Very easy targets." Kevin nodded along like a loyal puppy, and my blood pressure shot through the roof as it hit me. My own son was threatening me for money. But here's what they didn't know. I'd been recording everything for weeks, quietly building a case that would completely destroy their lives. If you're watching this, subscribe and tell me where you're watching from. But let me back up and explain how we got here. 6 months ago, I was Dorothy Williams's 72-year-old widow living in what I believed was a loving home with my son Kevin and his wife Tiffany in Colorado Springs. I had moved in 2 years earlier after my husband Harold passed away, thinking I was helping my family while they helped me through my grief. Kevin runs a struggling car dealership. He's the kind of man who learned how to smile through financial pressure but never learned how to manage money. At 45, he still carries that boyish charm that once convinced me he'd inherited his father's integrity. He hadn't. Tiffany, 38, works in pharmaceutical sales and carries herself with a polished desperation that screams, keeping up appearances while drowning in debt. Designer clothes bought on credit. A flawless image carefully maintained to hide crushing financial anxiety. Their kids, Tyler and Emma, are genuinely good kids stuck between loving their grandmother and staying loyal to parents who are slowly poisoning our family. Tyler is 16 and works part-time to save for college because his parents already spent his college fund. Emma is 13, wise beyond her years, and often the only one who treated me like a real person. The first crack in my illusion came 4 months ago. I got up around midnight to get some water and overheard Kevin and Tiffany talking in their bedroom. Their voices were low but urgent. "We can't keep carrying her," Tiffany said. "The extra groceries, utilities, we're barely covering our own expenses." "She's my mother," Kevin replied. "She's a financial burden we can't afford. Cedar Grove Nursing Home has payment plans. Medicare would cover most of it." I stood frozen in the hallway as they talked about warehousing me like unwanted furniture. "Mom would never agree to a nursing home," Kevin said. "She doesn't have to," Tiffany replied. "We get power of attorney, declare her mentally declining, and make the decision for her own good." The casual cruelty took my breath away. These weren't desperate people forced into impossible choices. They were calculating, methodical, and planning to steal my freedom for their own convenience. That's when I started paying attention. Really paying attention. Over the next few weeks, I noticed everything I'd been too trusting to see before. How they talked about me as if I wasn't there. How Tiffany calculated my expenses down to individual meals. How Kevin avoided being alone with me and let his wife handle the fake concern. I also stumbled onto the truth about their finances after accidentally seeing bank statements left on Kevin's desk. They weren't just struggling, they were drowning. $47,000 in credit card debt, 3 months behind on the mortgage, car payments they couldn't afford on vehicles bought purely to protect their image. They needed money badly, and I was standing in the way of fixing their financial mess. 2 months ago, I bought a lottery ticket not out of desperation, but out of defiance. I'd been feeling increasingly unwelcome in their home, increasingly aware that they saw me as expendable. Something inside me snapped. $5 felt like the ultimate middle finger to people who were counting my grocery costs. Then it happened, $127 million. When I saw those numbers, I sat in the convenience store parking lot for 20 minutes. My mind wasn't racing with joy, it was racing with strategy. I suddenly had power, real power, and the only question was how to use it. Most people would have moved out immediately, cut ties, and started fresh. But I wanted something more valuable than escape. I wanted justice. I wanted the world to see exactly who Kevin and Tiffany really were beneath their respectable facade. That's when I contacted Daniel Rodriguez, an investigative journalist I'd seen on a local news segment about elder abuse. We met at a downtown coffee shop, and that meeting changed everything. "Mrs. Williams," Daniel said after hearing my story, "what you're describing is textbook financial elder abuse. The nursing home threats, the power of attorney discussions, this is criminal behavior. Can you document it with your permission?" "Absolutely. Hidden cameras, audio equipment, but I have to warn you, once they find out about the money, this could get ugly fast." I smiled for the first time in months. "Mr. Rodriguez," I said, "ugly is exactly what I'm hoping for." The equipment was installed while Kevin and Tiffany were at work and the kids were at school. Daniel's team was professional, discreet, and thorough. And that was only the beginning. Cameras were hidden inside decorative objects. Audio devices were sensitive enough to pick up whispered conversations from the next room. Everything recorded to encrypted drives will document their behavior for several weeks, Daniel explained. Then, we'll reveal your lottery winnings and see how they react once they know you have money. The first test came sooner than I expected. That evening, Kevin approached me while I was reading in the living room. I knew the hidden camera in the bookshelf was capturing his serious expression. "Mom, we need to talk about your living arrangements." I looked up calmly. "What about them, honey?" Tiffany appeared moments later, holding printed documents like ammunition. "We've been researching senior living communities," she said. "Some really nice places with people your own age." Senior living communities. The euphemism made my skin crawl. "I'm comfortable here," I said simply. "But are you really?" Tiffany sat down, her voice thick with fake concern. "You spend so much time alone. Wouldn't you be happier somewhere with activities and social opportunities?" I studied her face, the woman now selling me my own exile. "I have social opportunities," I said. "I have my family." Kevin shifted uncomfortably. "Mom, that's the thing. Tiffany and I are entering a very demanding phase in our careers. I'm being considered for a regional manager position, which means longer hours and more travel. And I might be transferring to the Denver office," Tiffany added smoothly. "The commute would be brutal, and we'd need help with the kids after school." Help with the kids after school. I'd been providing that help for 2 years. Apparently, it was no longer valuable enough to justify my presence. "What exactly are you saying?" I asked, even though I already knew. "We think it would be better for everyone if you had your own place," Kevin said. "More independence for you, more space for us to manage our changing situation. More space like Iva's clutter in their lives." "Have you looked at any specific places?" I asked. Tiffany brightened, convinced she was winning. "Cedar Grove has a beautiful facility about 20 minutes from here. We could visit every week down from every day." "And what would something like that cost?" I asked. "It's quite reasonable," Tiffany said, carefully avoiding actual numbers. "There are payment plans, and Medicare covers a significant portion, not all of it, but most." "Never all of it." I nodded thoughtfully. "Let me think about it." After they left the room, I sat alone with my book, fully aware that every word had been recorded. The next day, I would call the lottery office and begin the next phase of my plan. That night, I heard them talking again through the thin walls. "She's not taking the hint," Tiffany said. "We need to be more direct. Give her time to adjust to the idea." "Kevin, we don't have time," she continued. "The mortgage payment is due in 2 weeks, and we're already behind. We either need that room-generating rental income, or we need her out so we can downsize." Rental income. They wanted to rent out my room to strangers. "What if she just refuses to go?" Kevin asked. "Then we make the decision for her," Tiffany said. "She's 72. Kevin, who's going to question our judgment about what's best for our elderly mother?" "Our elderly mother, not his mother. There's, like I was property to be managed." The next morning, I drove to the lottery office with a smile on my face for the first time in months. "Mrs. Williams, congratulations," Sarah from the Lottery Commission said. "How would you like to proceed with your winnings?" I'd spent weeks planning this conversation. "I want the lump sum transferred to a private account. No publicity, no press releases. The lump sum after federal and state taxes will be approximately $63.4 million. $63 million, more than enough to buy justice. There's something else," I added. "I'm working with a journalist on a story about elder abuse. I need the money available, but untouched until a specific date within days." Dorothy Williams had $63.4 million sitting untouched in a First National Bank account, but Kevin and Tiffany still saw me as their broke burden. The pressure escalated quickly. "Mom, did you call Cedar Grove yet?" Kevin asked 3 days later at dinner. "I've been thinking about what you said," I replied carefully. "About needing space." Tiffany immediately perked up. "And I understand your position," I continued, "but I'm not ready to make such a big change." The temperature in the room dropped. "Mom, we're trying to be patient," Kevin said, "but this isn't really a request anymore." "Not a request, an ultimatum. What does that mean exactly?" I asked. Tiffany took over sales training on full display. "It means we've already spoken to Cedar Grove about availability. They have an opening next month, and we've put down a deposit. They had paid for my exile without my consent." "You had no right to do that," I said quietly. "We have every right," Tiffany snapped. her mask finally slipping. You're living in our house and using our resources. If you want to stay, you need to start contributing more than the token amount you pay now. Token amount, I said. I pay $800 a month. That's more than fair for a single room. How much more? I asked. Kevin and Tiffany exchanged a look. They had clearly rehearsed this. $2,000 a month, Kevin said. That would cover your actual costs, plus a fair share of utilities and common areas. $2,000 a month. My Social Security check was only $1,475. They knew that. You know I can't afford that, I said. Then Cedar Grove it is, Tiffany replied with fake cheerfulness. The good news is Medicare covers most of the cost, and you'll have people your own age to socialize with. That night, I called Daniel. It's time for phase 2. Are you sure you're ready for this? He asked. I've been ready for months. The next morning, my friend Margaret from the senior center called the house, pretending to be from Publishers Clearinghouse. Tyler answered, which was perfect. Is Mrs. Dorothy Williams there? Margaret asked in her most official voice. Grandma, Tyler shouted, phone for you. I took my time walking to the phone, making sure Kevin and Tiffany could hear. Hello, I said, sounding confused. Mrs. Williams, this is Janet from Publishers Clearinghouse. I'm calling about your recent sweepstakes entry. The conversation unfolded exactly as planned. By the time I hung up claiming, I was skeptical about winning $25,000. Plus $1,000 a week for life. Tyler was practically vibrating with excitement. Grandma, you might be rich, he announced just as his parents walked in from work. I played my role, perfectly confused, doubtful, overwhelmed by the possibility, but I could see the wheels already turning in Kevin and Tiffany's minds. Suddenly, the woman they had been trying to warehouse was valuable again. The transformation was immediate and nauseating. Mom, that's incredible news, Kevin said, beaming with completely fabricated enthusiasm. What exactly did they say? Something about $25,000 right away, and $1,000 every week after that, I replied, keeping up my confused elderly act. But it's probably a scam, right? Not necessarily, Tiffany said quickly. Suddenly the picture of concern. Publishers Clearinghouse is legitimate. Maybe we should look into this more carefully. Look into this, translate it, control it, figure out how to get access to the money. I don't know, I said. It seems too good to be true. These things do happen, Mom, Kevin assured me. Remember the Hendersons down the street? They won $50,000 in a radio contest 2 years ago. The Hendersons had won $500, not $50,000. But Kevin was already rewriting history to fit his narrative. So what are you thinking of doing with the money? Tiffany asked, her tone carefully casual. I hadn't really thought about it, I lied. I suppose I should pay you back for everything you've spent on me. Their eyes lit up like it was Christmas morning. Mom, that's very thoughtful, Kevin said. But family helps family. You don't owe us anything. The hypocrisy was staggering. 24 hours earlier, they had demanded $2,000 a month or threatened to warehouse me. Now that I might have money, suddenly I owed them nothing. But maybe, Tiffany added carefully, we could help you manage it. Large sums of money can be overwhelming for someone who's never dealt with significant finances. Someone who's never dealt with significant finances, like I was too stupid to understand money. That's very kind, I said, but I think I can handle $1,000 a week. Of course you can, Kevin said too quickly, but there are tax implications, investment opportunities. We just want to make sure you're protected. Protected from what? Making my own decisions. That evening, I heard them talking again. Their whispered voices felt less private now that I knew every word was being recorded. She's being naive about this, Tiffany said. Elderly people are prime targets for financial scams. She needs guidance. What kind of guidance? Kevin asked. A joint account, maybe, or power of attorney for financial decisions just to protect her. Power of attorney, the same thing they had discussed months ago when they thought I was broke. I don't know, Tiff. Kevin hesitated. She's 72 years old, and about to have access to over $500,000 over the next 10 years. Tiffany said, do you really think she's capable of managing that responsibly? Apparently, I was too old and incompetent to manage my own money, but still capable enough to be thrown out and forced to manage my own living arrangements. We need to be careful, Kevin said. We don't want her to think we're after her money. Of course we're not after her money, Tiffany replied. We're protecting her from making mistakes that could hurt the whole family. Protecting the whole family like my financial choices somehow belonged to them. I lay in bed that night listening to them plan my financial subjugation, feeling a satisfaction I hadn't felt in years. Every manipulative word, every greedy calculation, every attempt to control me was being recorded by Daniel's equipment. Tomorrow, they would make their move, and I would be ready. The confrontation came exactly as I expected. I was making breakfast when they walked into the kitchen like a coordinated assault team. "Mom, we need to talk about your situation," Kevin began. "What situation?" I asked, continuing to scramble the eggs. "Your windfall," Tiffany said, settling onto a bar stool like she was preparing for a long negotiation. "We're concerned about your safety." I looked up with carefully manufactured confusion. "My safety? Elderly people who suddenly come into money are often targeted by criminals," Kevin explained, his voice patronizingly gentle. "Scam artists, financial predators, people who might try to take advantage of your generous nature." "That sounds terrible," I said. "What should I do?" They exchanged that familiar married couple look, the one that said this conversation had been rehearsed. "We think you should let us help you manage the money," Tiffany said. "Nothing drastic, just set up a joint account so we can monitor for any suspicious activity." "Monitor suspicious activity," I repeated. "Like what?" "Unusual withdrawals," Kevin said. "Investment schemes that seem too good to be true. People trying to befriend you for financial gain. People trying to befriend me for financial gain." The irony was suffocating. "But it's my money," I said, as if the idea had just occurred to me. "Of course it is," Kevin said quickly. "We're not trying to control it. We just want to protect it." "Protect it from what?" Tiffany's patience was already thinning. "From you making impulsive decisions you might regret later." "Impulsive decisions, like refusing to be controlled by them." "I don't think I'm impulsive," I said mildly. "Mom, no offense," Kevin said, "but you're not experienced with this kind of money. There are tax implications, investment strategies, legal considerations. It can be overwhelming." "Overwhelming for someone my age," he meant. "What exactly are you proposing?" I asked. "A joint checking account where the money gets deposited," Tiffany said. "We'd all have access, but any major expenditures would be discussed as a family." Discussed as a family, code for approved by them. "And what would you consider a major expenditure?" "Anything over, say, $500, Kevin suggested. "That still gives you plenty of flexibility for day-to-day expenses while ensuring the bulk of the money is protected." $500. They wanted to put me on a $500 allowance from my own money. "That seems reasonable," I said slowly, watching their faces light up with greedy satisfaction. "We're also thinking," Tiffany added, "that since you'll be staying here long-term now, we should formalize the arrangement. Maybe $1,500 a month for room and board." "That's much less than Cedar Grove would have cost." $1,500 a month from my own winnings to live in their house. "And the rest of the money?" I asked. "We'd invest it conservatively," Kevin said. "Build your nest egg for the future." "Build my nest egg by giving them control of it. What do you think?" Tiffany asked, her sales smile at full wattage. I pretended to consider their generous offer to steal my money, while charging me rent to stay in their home. "It sounds like you've put a lot of thought into this," I said finally. "We just want what's best for you, Mom. And what if I don't want to put the money into a joint account?" The temperature in the room dropped 20 degrees. "Well," Kevin said carefully, "that would be your choice. But it would make us very worried about your judgment." "My judgment?" The first hint of the threat to come. "Worried how?" I asked. Tiffany leaned forward, her voice honey-sweet with malice. "Dorothy, elderly people who suddenly acquire wealth and then start making erratic financial decisions. Well, sometimes family members have to step in to protect them." "Step in to protect them. Power of attorney by force." "I see," I said. "And if you agreed to the joint account," Kevin said, "we'd all feel comfortable knowing your money was safe." Safe from me, he meant. That night, I heard their real feelings through the walls. "She's going to fight us on this," Tiffany said. I could see it in her eyes. "Maybe she'll come around. And if she doesn't," Tiffany pressed, "Kevin, this is over $500,000 we're talking about. Do you really want to watch your mother blow it all on shopping channels and charity scams?" I wasn't buying anything from shopping channels or giving money to charity scams, but the truth didn't matter. "What are you suggesting?" Kevin asked. "I'm suggesting that old people with a lot of cash become targets," Tiffany said, "and sometimes accidents happen to targets." There it was, the threat I had been waiting for. "Tiffany," Kevin said, "you can't be serious." "I'm serious about protecting our family's future," Tiffany said. "That money could pay off our debts. secure the kids' college funds, give us the life we deserve. Are we supposed to just stand by and watch her waste it because we're too polite to take control, our family's future? Somehow, my money had already become their inheritance. The conversation that would destroy them was still ahead. The final confrontation came exactly 1 week later. I was making my morning coffee when they surrounded me in the kitchen, Kevin blocking the doorway, Tiffany positioning herself between me and the phone. We need to settle this money situation today, Tiffany announced. What's there to settle? I asked. You've been avoiding the conversation about the joint account, Kevin said. We need a decision. I've been thinking about it for a week, Tiffany snapped, her patience finally gone. How long does it take to make a simple decision? A simple decision, as if signing over control of my money were nothing. I'm not sure I want to put my money into a joint account, I said quietly. The masks came off instantly. Ma, that's not really your choice anymore, Kevin said, his voice hardening. We've been patient. But your refusal to accept help is concerning. Concerning to whom? I asked. To us, Tiffany said, to anyone who cares about your well-being. Elderly people who become paranoid about money management are showing signs of cognitive decline. Cognitive decline, the nuclear option. I'm not paranoid, I said. I just want to control my own money. That's exactly what someone with impaired judgment would say, Tiffany replied smoothly. Dorothy, we've been documenting your erratic behavior for weeks. The refusal to move into appropriate senior housing, paranoia about family members, inability to make rational financial decisions. Documenting my erratic behavior. What kind of documentation? I asked, though I already knew. Kevin pulled out a folder. Emails to your doctor about your increasing confusion, notes about your memory lapses, photographs of your medication mistakes. Medication mistakes. I'd never made any medication mistakes. We've also spoken to an attorney about emergency conservatorship procedures, Tiffany added, in cases where elderly people are at risk of financial exploitation or self-harm through poor judgment. Family members can step in immediately. They had consulted an attorney about stealing my autonomy. You can't do that, I whispered. We don't want to, Kevin said, his voice dripping with fake regret. But if you force our hand by refusing reasonable assistance, theft dressed up as kindness, what exactly do you want? I asked. Joint account with shared access, Tiffany said, a monthly allowance of $500 for personal expenses, all major financial decisions made as a family. And if I agree, then you stay here, Kevin said. We manage your money responsibly, and everyone's happy. And if I don't? Kevin and Tiffany exchanged that look again, the one that meant something terrible was coming. Then we're forced to conclude that you're not competent to manage your affairs, Kevin said. We'll file for emergency conservatorship and have you evaluated by medical professionals. Medical professionals already primed with their fabricated evidence. You'd have me declared incompetent, I said. We'd have you declared protected, Tiffany corrected, from your own poor judgment and from people who might take advantage of you. People like them, though she would never say it. This is extortion, I said quietly. This is family intervention. Tiffany replied, Dorothy, you need to understand something. Old lottery winners have accidents all the time. Very easy targets. We're trying to prevent you from becoming a statistic. There it was. The threat I'd been waiting 6 weeks to hear. Kevin looked uncomfortable, but didn't contradict his wife. So what's it going to be? Tiffany pressed. Cooperative family money management, or do we have to make these decisions for you? I looked at them, my son and his wife standing in my kitchen, threatening to steal my money and my freedom if I didn't submit willingly, and then I smiled. Did you get that? I asked, looking straight at the camera hidden inside the decorative bowl on the counter. Their faces went white, because Daniel Rodriguez and his documentary crew have been recording everything for the past 6 weeks, I continued, and we now have comprehensive evidence of your plans to commit financial elder abuse, extortion, and conspiracy. The silence that followed was the sweetest sound I had ever heard. What are you talking about? Kevin's voice cracked. I walked over, lifted the bowl, and revealed the tiny camera underneath. This one's been here since the day after you first mentioned Cedar Grove, I said. There are 5 others throughout the house, plus audio equipment that's been recording your late-night planning sessions. Tiffany stared at the camera like it was a poisonous snake. You can't do this. This is illegal. It's not. I said cheerfully. Colorado is a one-party consent state. As long as one person in the conversation knows it's being recorded on, that person is perfectly legal. How long? Kevin whispered. 6 weeks, I replied. 6 weeks of documentation. Your threats to have me declared incompetent, your plans to steal my money through a fake conservatorship, and your little comment about lottery winners having accidents. I looked directly at Tiffany. That last part is going to be especially interesting to prosecutors. The look of horror slowly spreading across their faces was worth every miserable moment of the past 6 weeks, but the biggest revelation was still coming. The silence in my kitchen was deafening. Kevin's face had gone gray. Tiffany looked like she might collapse. Both of them stared at the tiny camera I'd revealed, as if it might suddenly explode. 6 weeks. Kevin's voice was barely audible. You've been recording us for 6 weeks. Every conversation, every threat, every plan to steal my autonomy and my money, I confirmed, including last night's discussion about having me declared incompetent, wife's charming comment about accidents happening to lottery winners. Tiffany finally found her voice. This is entrapment. You tricked us. I documented you. I corrected calmly. There's a difference. Entrapment is when law enforcement tricks someone into committing a crime they wouldn't otherwise commit. I simply recorded you being yourselves. That's when Daniel Rodriguez stepped out of the pantry, where he'd been monitoring the equipment. Kevin and Tiffany spun around like cornered animals. Daniel Rodriguez, he said calmly, investigative journalist. I've been documenting elder abuse cases for the past 3 years. Mrs. Williams contacted me after overhearing your initial conversations about power of attorney in nursing homes. You can't use this, Kevin said desperately. We're family. This is a private matter. Financial elder abuse is never a private matter, Daniel replied, adjusting his equipment. It's a federal crime, especially when it involves threats of violence. Tiffany was crying now. Whether it was fear or anger, I couldn't tell. We never meant any of it, she said. We were just stressed, frustrated about money. Stressed enough to threaten your mother-in-law's life, Daniel asked flatly. That was taken out of context. What context makes old lottery winners have accidents all the time acceptable? I asked. She had no answer. Kevin collapsed into a kitchen chair, burying his face in his hands. Mom, you don't understand, he said. We owe $47,000 on credit cards. We're 3 months behind on the mortgage. The dealership is cutting commissions by 30%. We're drowning. For the first time in weeks, my son sounded human. Instead of calculating, but financial pressure didn't excuse planning to steal from your own mother. So you decided the solution was to rob me, I said. We didn't think of it as robbing, Kevin said quietly. We thought we were protecting you from making mistakes. By taking control of my money and charging me rent to live in your house. The room and board thing was Tiffany's idea, Kevin added quickly, throwing his wife under the bus with practiced ease. Tiffany's tears stopped instantly. Don't you dare blame this on me, she snapped. You were the one who said your mother owed us for 2 years of support. You were the one who calculated every grocery bill and utility payment because we couldn't afford another person. I watched them turn on each other and felt a mix of satisfaction and sadness. This was what financial stress had done to my family, turned them into predators willing to devour anyone, even me. There's something else you should know, I said quietly. Both of them looked at me with dread. The publisher's clearinghouse call was fake. I never won $25,000 or $1,000 a week. But Tiffany's voice cracked. I walked to my jewelry box and pulled out the bank statement. I'd been saving for this moment. I won the Powerball 4 months ago. After taxes, I have $63.4 million in my account. The sound Kevin made wasn't entirely human. Tiffany grabbed the counter to keep herself upright. $63 million, I continued, which I've deliberately left untouched while we documented how you treated a woman you believed had modest winnings. Why? Kevin whispered. If you had that kind of money, why didn't you just leave? Because I wanted the world to see who you really are, I said. I wanted proof of how my own family treated me when they thought I was vulnerable, and I wanted to make sure this never happens to another elderly person. Daniel kept filming. This footage would become part of a documentary scheduled to air 6 months later, after the legal process was complete. What happens now? Tiffany asked. Now, I said calmly, you live with the consequences of your choices. The immediate aftermath was chaos. Kevin and Tiffany spent the rest of that day frantically calling lawyers, trying to understand their legal exposure. Daniel interviewed them both on camera, giving each of them the opportunity to explain their actions. Kevin's interview was painful to watch. My son, stripped of his sales charm and forced to confront what he'd done, looked like a broken man. I never wanted it to go this far, he said. The money stress, the pressure from Tiffany, the feeling that Mom didn't appreciate what we were doing for her just snowballed. When did you first discuss taking control of her finances? Daniel asked. Kevin was silent for a long moment. About 6 months ago, he admitted. We were fighting about the mortgage payment, and Tiff said Mom should be contributing more. Then she said maybe Mom wasn't capable of making good decisions about money. Did you believe that? Daniel asked. I wanted to, Kevin said quietly, because it made things easier. If Mom wasn't competent, then we could make decisions for her own good. Tiffany's interview was far more defensive. She insisted that everything they had done came from genuine concern for my well-being, though she couldn't explain how charging me rent from my own money amounted to care. Dorothy is 72 years old, she said. Elderly people with sudden wealth are vulnerable to scams, to poor decisions. We were trying to protect her by threatening involuntary commitment if she didn't comply. Daniel asked. That was a last resort, Tiffany said quickly. We hoped she'd see reason. And the comment about lottery winners having accidents, Tiffany's composure cracked. I was angry, she said. People say things when they're angry. Do you understand that threatening harm to an elderly person for financial gain is a felony? Daniel asked. She began crying again. The children's reactions were heartbreaking. Tyler, 16 and old enough to understand the implications, was angry at everyone, his parents for their greed, me for the deception, and the situation for existing at all. Why couldn't you just work it out as a family? He asked me that evening. Because your parents weren't treating me like family, I told him. They were treating me like a financial obstacle to be eliminated. Emma, 13, and still trying to process adult complexities, asked the question that cut deepest. Are you really never coming back, Grandma? I hugged her tightly. Sweetheart, I'm moving to a different house, but I'm not disappearing. You can visit me anytime you want. But it won't be the same, she said quietly. She was right. Nothing would ever be the same. Over the next several days, I worked with a realtor to find a new home. Not the Wilson place I'd impulsively mentioned during the confrontation that had been dramatic flair for the cameras. Instead, I chose a modest 3-bedroom house about 10 minutes away, big enough for grandchildren to visit, small enough for one person to manage comfortably. The purchase process took 6 weeks, normal for real estate transactions. Despite what movies suggest, during that time, I stayed in a hotel, giving Kevin and Tiffany space to process what had happened while maintaining boundaries for my own protection. Daniel's preliminary footage was compelling enough to attract interest from several networks. We ultimately signed with Channel 9 for a 1-hour documentary special, with the agreement that nothing would air until all legal proceedings were resolved. Those proceedings began 2 months later. Detective Sarah Martinez from the Colorado Springs Police Department's Financial Crimes Unit contacted me in early October. She was a serious woman in her 40s who had spent 15 years investigating elder abuse cases. Mrs. Williams, she said, I've reviewed the footage provided by Mr. Rodriguez. There's sufficient evidence for criminal charges, but I need to ask, do you want to press charges against your own son and daughter? It was the question I had been dreading. Detective, I asked, if Kevin and Tiffany had succeeded in their plan, what would have happened to me? Based on their recorded conversations, she said, they would have filed for emergency conservatorship, had you declared incompetent, gained control of your finances, and likely placed you in a nursing facility against your will. And would I have had any recourse? Once someone is declared incompetent, she replied, challenging that determination is extremely difficult. You would have been legally powerless. That answered my question. File the charges, I said. The indictment came down 3 weeks later. Kevin was charged with conspiracy to commit financial elder abuse and making false statements to obtain conservatorship. Tiffany faced the same charges, along with criminal threats against an elderly person for her comment about accidents. Local news coverage was extensive but respectful. The story had everything the media looks for: family betrayal, hidden cameras, dramatic revelations, but reporters focused on the broader issue of elder abuse rather than sensationalizing our family tragedy. Kevin and Tiffany's lives unraveled quickly. Kevin's dealership terminated him immediately. They couldn't have someone facing elder abuse charges representing their business. Tiffany's pharmaceutical company placed her on unpaid administrative leave pending the outcome of the criminal case, and their friends began to distance themselves. Neighbors, who had once been friendly, grew coldly polite. Tyler and Emma had to endure whispered conversations at school about their parents being on the news for threatening their own grandmother. I felt deeply sorry for the children. None of this was their fault, yet they were paying the price for choices they didn't make. That's why I decided to speak to them directly one evening in early November. I found Tyler working a shift at the grocery store, the part-time job he'd taken to help with household expenses. "Hi, sweetheart," I said softly. He glanced around nervously, as if being seen with me might create even more trouble. "Hi, Grandma, how are you doing? How do you think I'm doing?" he snapped, the anger in his voice sharp but understandable. "My parents might go to prison. We're probably going to lose the house, and everyone at school knows about it because it was on the news." "I'm sorry you're going through this," I said. "Are you?" His eyes challenged me. "Because it feels like you planned all of this." It was a fair accusation. In a way, I had planned it. "Tyler, let me ask you something," I said. "If someone were planning to steal your college fund and have you declared incompetent so they could control your life, what would you do?" "They're not strangers," he said quietly. "They're my parents. Grandma, they love you, do they?" I asked. "Because people who love you don't plot to lock you away in a nursing home and steal your money." Tyler was silent for a moment. "Dad says they were just trying to protect you," he finally said. "Protect me from what?" I asked. He couldn't answer. "Tyler, I want you to understand something," I continued. "The money I was planning to share it with your family. College funds for you and Emma, paying off your parents' debts, maybe even helping them buy a bigger house." His eyes widened. "Really, really?" I said. "If they had just been patient and kind, they could have had everything they wanted. Instead, they chose cruelty and greed. How much would you have given them?" he asked. "Probably around $2 million. Tyler staggered slightly. $2 million, he whispered, "and they threw that away by trying to steal from you." "Greed makes people stupid, sweetheart," I said gently. "Your parents could have been millionaires if they had simply treated me with basic respect." That conversation changed something in Tyler. Over the next few weeks, he began asking his parents harder questions about their decisions. Emma followed his lead. Slowly, both children began to understand that their grandmother hadn't destroyed their family. Their parents' greed had. The trial began in March, 9 months after the confrontation in the kitchen. Kevin and Tiffany hired separate attorneys, which told me everything I needed to know about the state of their marriage. Kevin's lawyer, David Chen, pursued a strategy that portrayed his client as a man crushed by financial pressure, someone who had made poor decisions but never intended real harm. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," Chen said in his opening statement, "this case is about a son trying to help his aging mother make responsible financial decisions. Were his methods perfect? No. Did he express frustration inappropriately at times? Yes. But criminal intent to defraud an elderly person? Absolutely not." Tiffany's attorney, Maria Santos, took a different approach. She threw Kevin under the bus, portraying Tiffany as a woman manipulated by her husband's desperation. Mrs. Tiffany Williams was dragged into this situation by a husband whose financial irresponsibility created impossible pressure on their family, Santos argued. "Any inappropriate comments Tiffany made," she said, "were expressions of frustration, not criminal threats." The prosecution, led by Assistant District Attorney Robert Kim, told a much simpler story. "This case is about greed," Kim said. "Two adults who saw an elderly family member as an obstacle to their financial goals and were willing to use any means necessary to remove that obstacle." Threats of violence. My testimony lasted 2 days. I walked the jury through the recordings, explaining the context of each conversation and how it felt to hear my own family plotting against me. Mrs. Williams, Kim asked, "When you heard your son and daughter-in-law discussing power of attorney and nursing homes, what did you think?" "I thought they were planning to steal my freedom," I replied, and I was right. Kevin's testimony was even harder to watch. My son, oath and facing possible prison time, was forced to acknowledge the full scope of what he and Tiffany had planned. "Did you and your wife discuss having your mother declared incompetent?" Kim asked. "Yes," Kevin admitted quietly. "For what purpose?" "To gain control of our finances, even though she showed no signs of mental decline." Kevin's voice barely carried. "Yes, Tiffany's testimony was combative. She continued to insist that everything they had done was driven by genuine concern. Even when confronted with recordings of her calculating my grocery expenses and discussing my worth as a rental income source. "When you said that old lottery winners have accidents all the time," Kim asked, "what did you mean?" "I meant that elderly people are vulnerable to scams and exploitation," Tiffany said quickly, "by people like you." "Objection," Santos called out. "Sustained," the judge replied. But the damage was already done. The jury had heard it. They deliberated for 6 hours over the course of 2 days. When they finally returned, their expressions were grim. On the charge of conspiracy to commit financial elder abuse, we find the defendant, Kevin Williams, guilty. I watched my son's shoulders sag as his future collapsed in front of him. On the charge of conspiracy to commit financial elder abuse, we find the defendant, Tiffany Williams, guilty. On the additional charge of criminal threats against an elderly person, we find the defendant, Tiffany Williams, guilty. Sentencing was scheduled for 6 weeks later. Kevin was sentenced to 14 months in minimum security federal prison, followed by 3 years of supervised probation. Tiffany received 18 months plus probation, the longer sentence reflecting the seriousness of her threat. Both were also ordered to complete 200 hours of community service at elder care facilities after their release. I didn't feel satisfaction watching them led away in handcuffs. There was no sense of victory, only a deep, aching sadness that our family had come to this. But what happened didn't end with us. The documentary, The Grandmother Who Fought Back, aired 6 months after the trial concluded. It ignited national conversations about elder abuse and contributed to legislative changes in several states. More importantly, it gave courage to elderly people who were being exploited by their own families. I received hundreds of letters from people who saw themselves in my story. That's what led to the creation of the Dorothy Williams Foundation for Elder Justice. Using a portion of my lottery winnings, I established a nonprofit that provides legal assistance, temporary housing, and support services for elderly people trying to escape financial abuse by family members. In our first year alone, we helped 89 families. We paid for attorneys to challenge illegal concerns. We provided safe housing for seniors fleeing abusive homes. We pushed for stronger laws and better enforcement. Most importantly, we showed elderly Americans that being old does not mean being powerless. Tyler and Emma visit me often. Tyler is now attending Colorado State University, studying business with a determination to never repeat his parents' mistakes. Emma is a sophomore in high school and volunteers at the foundation on weekends. She's already talking about studying elder law in college. Kevin and Tiffany served their full sentences. Federal prison doesn't offer early release for good behavior like some state systems do. They divorced while incarcerated, each blaming the other for how everything turned out. Kevin now works at a small used car lot in Pueblo, earning about a third of what he once made. He lives in a modest apartment and pays child support. Tiffany moved back into her parents' home with Emma. We see each other occasionally at Tyler's graduation, at Emma's birthday parties, but our relationship will never recover. Too much trust was broken, too much damage was done. 2 years after his release, Kevin sent me a letter apologizing and asking if we could rebuild our relationship. I wrote back a single sentence: "The foundation is always looking for volunteers. If you're interested in making amends by helping other families avoid what happened to us." He never replied. But Tyler did volunteer, and Emma plans to dedicate her future to protecting the elderly. That my grandchildren learned from their parents' mistakes in ways that give me hope. At 72, I've learned that family isn't always defined by blood. Sometimes the people who claim to love you are the ones most willing to hurt you. And sometimes strangers become family when they help you fight battles you can't fight alone. Today, the Dorothy Williams Foundation operates in 12 states. We've helped more than 400 families escape elder abuse. We've successfully challenged 7 fraudulent conservatorships and helped recover over $8 million in stolen assets. Both our greatest victories aren't measured in money or legal precedents. They're measured in dignity. People who learned they are worth protecting. Families who learned that respect doesn't expire with age. I never wanted to become a symbol for elder rights. I only wanted justice for what my own family did to me. But sometimes, personal justice becomes something larger, a movement, a mission, a reason to keep fighting even after your own battle is over. At 72, I learned that I was worth fighting for now. I spend my days helping other elderly people learn the same lesson, and that more than any lottery jackpot feels like winning. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.